to Business 140, Personal Financial Planning, Chapter 4. I don't know where I got 2 from. Chapter 4, Managing Your Cash and Savings with Professor Jolene. Okay, this is the 4th chapter, so we are getting ready to finish up Unit 1. After this chapter, you'll be taking test number 1. We'll be 25% through with this semester. Talk a little bit about, we're talking about managing your cash and savings. Let's go to a business first. Let's talk about a business. Let's say you have a business and the business is pretty profitable. They're doing pretty well, and they're making a profit. And they're taking a lot of that money that they're making and they're putting it into new buildings. They're putting it into new equipment. They're using a lot of that money to expand. If it's a family business, maybe they're taking some money out of the business to buy some personal things or whatever, which they could do if it was a family business. Could you see a situation where they might get in trouble from the point of view that they had some bills or something come up and they didn't have the money to pay for them because they had tied up so much of their money in what we call fixed assets? They had bought equipment and they had bought buildings and they had and maybe trucks and things like this, and then the bills come due and they don't have just money in the bank to be able to take care of them. Excuse me. Does that ever happen? The answer is yes. Have sometimes profitable businesses gone belly up because they couldn't take care of their current obligations? And the answer to that is yes. Well, that money, that cash, that checking account, that money in savings, stuff that is cash money or stuff that could be turned into cash pretty quickly, those are called liquid assets. A business's liquid assets. Okay, do you have liquid assets as well? Well, the answer to that is yes, or you should. So when we're talking about managing your cash and savings, what we're really talking about is managing your liquid assets. Make sure that you have the liquid assets that you need to take care of your day-to-day, week-to-week obligations, to pay for those expenses that you've budgeted for, and also maybe to be setting aside some money for some other things. So that's what we're going to be looking at. All right, so let's start off with a no. All right, we're always excited to start off with a no. Let's know what cash management is. And one thing that I realize, I'm glad to have you on every video to watch the video with me. But there was a couple of things on my study notes that I mentioned, but I kind of left out a couple of things that were kind of important. So this video is going to kind of supplement these study notes as well. Cash management, the routine, day-to-day administration of cash and near cash, liquid asset resources by an individual or family. Should you manage your liquid assets? Should you manage your cash? Yeah, we want to make our money work for us. We want to have very little money that's sitting in the mattress. It's not working for us in any way. We want that money working for us. But at the same time, we know that we have to have certain liquid assets or the availability of certain liquid assets in case we have obligations that we need to pay. All right. The routine day-to-day administration of cash and near cash, liquid assets, resources by an individual or family. Okay, most of us put our liquid assets in financial institutions. It's really never a good idea to keep a lot of money at home or things like that. I mean, you need to be putting that money where that money can work for you, at least some, and also be safe. Now, I was looking at the types of financial institutions, and I realized that I didn't write down here for you the two most common financial institutions. Let me put those up here, although you probably know them. I'll call it a commercial bank. One of them is a bank, and the other one is a credit union. I imagine most of you have some type of financial arrangement. You have a checking account, you have a savings account, you have a debit card, you have something either with a commercial bank or a credit union. So let's talk just a minute or two about what's the difference. Well, I guess let's go back the other way. What's similar about them? If I took you into a bank or I took you into a credit union blindfolded and I took all the signs down, it'd be kind of hard to tell which it was. Is it a bank or a credit union? They're both taking in deposits. They may be cashing checks. They're going to be making loans. They're going to be doing stuff like that that's being done. But there's a difference between a commercial bank and a credit union. Anybody? I'd love for you to be in class with where you could tell me. But are you thinking what the differences are? There's got to be a difference, or they wouldn't call them two different things. Okay, a bank is a for-profit institution. A bank is there to make a profit. Now, I know we're not in Business 101, but my question is this: a profit for whom? Remember this: profit from a business goes to the owner. Sometimes people say, well, it's a profit for the president of the bank, or it's no, they make a salary. Right? So a bank is a for-profit institution for their owners. And both of these organizations, they accept deposits, make loans, that sort of thing. They're very similar. Okay, so what's the difference with a credit union? Somebody probably said that. A credit union is a non-profit, member-owned. Which one of these two should be able to provide maybe a little bit better for their customers? If you said credit union, I'd probably go along with you that you're probably right. Because a credit union, all the revenue that they generate above their expenses stays in that credit union to provide additional services or services at a lower cost, or investments that they can give you a higher rate on than a commercial bank. Now, am I an anti-commercial bank? No, I have two checking accounts. I have a checking account in a commercial bank, and I have a checking account in a credit union. But I have noticed is if I'm investing like in a CD, a certificate of deposit, a savings, the rate at the credit union will normally be a little higher than the rate at the bank. They both do very good. They're both excellent financial institutions. But I wanted you to be familiar with a credit union, a nonprofit member-owned, a commercial bank, for-profit for their owners. Okay. And that's normally the two types of financial institutions that most of us deal with. Now let's talk about deposits. What if you deposit money into that bank and somebody comes and robs the bank? If you lost your money, what if the bank official steals all the money and goes to Australia. You lost all your money? Are your deposits safe in a bank, excuse me, or in a credit union? The answer is yes. Your deposits are insured by a semi-agency insurance of the federal government. Now, here's what you would look for. If you go into a bank, you'll see a plaque probably on the wall somewhere, and it says FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. That means your deposits are insured in that institution. If you go to a credit union, you'll see an NCUA, National Credit Union Association. Same thing, they insure deposits within that credit union. If you find a bank that doesn't have that, I'd run. Okay, I think you'll find that most all banks and credit unions have that that insurance coverage for deposits. Okay, how much? I think I heard somebody right through the camera say $100,000. You used to be right. It changed in 2014, I think. It's $250,000. So your deposits are insured up to $250,000 by the FDICA in a commercial bank or the NCUA in a credit union. Well, you've gotten into this personal financial planning, and you've gotten so good, you've got tons of money. What about the rest of my money I want to deposit? Well, how could you cover the rest of your money? Somebody probably said you could use several banks and several credit unions. That's true, because you get that same $250,000 deposit insurance in each one of the banks and the federal credit unions that you use. Something else that you could do, let's say myself, my wife, her name is Elise. What we could do is we could, at the bank or the credit union, I could have a deposit. I have money, savings or checking. I have $250,000 credit, insurance, not credit, $250,000 insurance on that deposit. My wife could have an account, and she would have $250,000. Then we could have a joint account, joint lease, and we could have another $250,000. Now, if I had 3 Joe Lane accounts, I would not get $250 on each one of those accounts because they're insuring me. There's just one me. And even if I set it up in 3 different accounts, I'm still just one entity. But I am an entity, my wife is an entity, and my wife and I together are a different animal, separate entity. Anyway, way too far on that. Now, that's not what, what I want you to be familiar with. I want you to be familiar with the fact that your deposits are insured up to $250,000. Now, there's something that I think you need to know, because sometimes people don't realize this. Looking for another color. Maybe this is a good green. Let's see. Not bad. Banks also have investment departments. A lot of times you can go into a bank and you can buy an investment, like a stock or a bond or something like that. All right. So you go into a local bank, and we'll probably talk more about this when we get into investments, but just from this point, let's say you go into a bank and you use that bank and you invest some money in stock, and you buy $10,000 worth of stock. Well, now wait a minute. Stock can go up and stock can go down. Well, what about 2 months later, your stock is only worth $9,000? Can you go back to the bank and say, hey, I want that other $1,000 paid to me that I lost in my investment because of your insurance? The answer to that is no. When you do an investment is a risk. You know, when I invest in something that I know, like a stock or a mutual fund. It may go up in value, it may go down. That's a risk. There's a risk in an investment. There should not be a risk in a deposit, because that's your money that they're holding for you, in essence. So just be familiar with the fact that the insurance coverage is for deposits, not for investments. Okay, let's talk a little banking talk. What's another name for a demand deposit? I'm sorry, or let me call it a demand. I think I called it here. I called it a demand deposit or demand account. What's another name for a demand deposit? Checking account? That's it. The technical name for a checking account is a demand deposit. That means you can have that money on demand. Okay? What's another name for a time deposit? Savings. That means that this is money you're putting in the bank for the purpose of saving that money, perhaps so it can grow some interest because of some financial objectives you're trying to accomplish. And a CD, a certificate of deposit, is a particular type of savings. It's where you save for a particular period. You buy a CD for a particular period of time. Okay. So I just want you to be familiar with a demand deposit is another name for a checking account. A time deposit is another name for some type of savings account. If you open up a regular savings account or you open up a certificate of deposit, that's a savings deposit. Or I'm sorry, that's a time deposit. All right. Does that make sense? You okay with that? One quick little side note on demand accounts or demand deposits, checking accounts. I said that they're called that because you can get your money on demand. If I go into a bank and I put a $10,000 check, I deposit it, and it's drawn on the Bank of Fargo, North Dakota. I think Fargo's in North Dakota. And I give them the $10,000 check, they give me my deposit receipt, and I walk out to my car. Now, by the way, I only had $100 in my checking account before I put the $10,000 in. I walk out to my car. I think, wait a minute. I was supposed to buy that little boat, my little fishing boat. I go back in and I say, I want to withdraw $3,000 out of my checking account. Am I going to get it? I'm not. Because why? But it's a checking account. It's a demand deposit. I'm supposed to be able to get my money on demand. You get your money on demand as long as they have it, as long as they've received that money. That money has not come to them from Fargo, North Dakota, or wherever I said it was coming from. It'll probably come overnight in a wire transfer. But when you make a deposit into the bank, you can get that money anytime you want to, as long as that bank has received those funds. Now, if I walked into that bank and I gave them $10,000 cash, and I walked out to my car and said, doggone, I forgot. I'll walk back in and say, I hate this, but I needed $3,000 of that money. I need to get that out of my account. Can you get it? Well, sure, because they've got it. They've got it. That's just a little side note. I'll see in big letters here, I put EFTS, Electronic Funds Transfer Systems, using the latest telecommunications and computer technology to electronically transfer money into and out of customers' accounts. How many of you write checks? Have a lot of y'all gotten to the point where you don't write very many checks? Maybe you don't even use checks at all. You pay your bills online. How many of you have a debit card? You know, that sort of thing. Okay, electronic funds transfer system. I just want you to be familiar with what that is, and here's why. Do banks like for you to utilize electronic transfers? Do they like for you to use that for your making deposits and doing all those different type things? Well, the answer to that you probably already know if you've seen their advertisement. They're always advertising and saying things about how great you can make deposits by way of your phone. You can do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And they're encouraging you to do that. Why? Less labor, less tellers that they have to have. They can reduce their labor force, reducing expenses. Remember, going back to balance sheet, they can reduce their expenses the more you do with electronic funds transfer. So that's encouraged by the bank. And more, some of those older people that grew up with checking accounts and all that kind of stuff, they still write a lot of checks. But a lot of folks, they don't do that anymore. They use electronic funds transfer. Okay. Debit card. Now, I started mentioning this at the very first of this chapter. So a lot of this stuff in this particular chapter you already are familiar with. I mean, you know what a checking account is. You may not know it's a demand deposit, but we've already clarified that. You know what a savings account is. You really knew what a bank was. We just kind of cleaned it up a little bit of how it differs from a credit union. Now, a few things we may not have known, like the FDIC and the NCUA and the $250,000. But a lot of this we know. Debit cards. I had the next 15 minutes set aside to explain to you what a debit card is. I'm going to reduce that down by 14 and a half minutes or so. You know what a debit is. A debit card a credit card? No, a debit card is a debit card. If you use a debit card to buy something, what does that do? That takes money out of your account, out of your checking account. Okay, all right. So you know what a debit card is. I bet you even know what an ATM is. Okay, so anyway, just be familiar with what a debit card is, be familiar with what an ATM is. As we kind of move down here, I'm looking at my handout, maintaining a checking account. Those of you that have a checking account, why do you have it at that particular credit union or that particular bank? Why did you choose that particular one? A lot of people say, well, I chose it because that's where my parents bank, or that's where my wife banks, or husband banks, or something like that. I put in here for you on your handout, maintain account. You see out there beside I said convenience, services, and cost. Most of us choose the place that we bank, and that could include credit unions. It's one that's most convenient to us, the one that provides the services to us that we want, or the ones that have the lower cost. So just be familiar with the fact that those are probably the three primary reasons why people choose a particular type of financial institution to do their savings, checking, do their financial type stuff. Now this is another freebie. It's great to establish a good relationship with a financial institution. It's good for your credit. When you get ready to buy that car, maybe it's going to be the first one you buy on your own or something like this. If you've already established a relationship with a financial institution, you know the branch manager at that bank, you have a savings account there or CD, you have a checking account there. Building that good relationship makes that sort of thing really, really good. All right, so let's look at a couple of, not everything, but a few things as far as a checking account is concerned. Service charges, it's always a good idea to know what the service charges are. A lot of times there are no service charges if you keep a minimum balance, that type of thing. One thing I do want you to be familiar with, though, is what is an overdraft? That's it. It's when you write a check or you utilize funds that are not that you don't have, that you overdraft your account, and that can be expensive. You write a check for $10 and you overdraft your account. Now, if you have a good relationship with that financial institution, they might go ahead and pay that and let you put that money in there, but they're probably going to charge you a $30 or $35 service fee for that. So overdrafts are expensive. Overdrafts are expensive. So I'd just be familiar with what you want to maintain good credit. And one of the ways that you can mess up credit pretty quickly is overdrafting. Because if they don't honor that payment, then then they don't honor that check. Then some company's not getting their money they're supposed to get their money, and you haven't paid that bill, and so you don't want to overdraft. Now, I will say this. If you build up a relationship with a company, a bank, a financial institution, you can get overdraft protection. You can do that a couple of ways. You can say, hey, look, if for some reason I overdraft, would you just automatically take that money out of savings and put it into my checking account? And the bank will do that. Will they charge you a fee? Yes. You could also ask for a bank, hey, if I overdraft, will you put a certain amount of money in my account, or will you put money in my account to cover that? And the bank, what they'll usually do, if you overdraft, there's certain incremental amounts that they'll put in, and they'll put that money into your account. Do you have to pay that money back with interest? Yes, you do. But it's a service. It's first of all, don't overdraft. But if you do overdraft, make sure you have some kind of overdraft protection, even though it's going to cost you at least some type of a fee. Stopping payment. I want you to be familiar with what an overdraft is. I'm not too concerned about stopping payment, other than I want to make just a point about it. Sometimes, what is stop payment? Just what it says. You're stopping payment on a check. You're stopping payment on a financial transaction. That's okay. But don't stop payment on something where the stop payment fee is going to be more than the check. Let's say the check itself. I wrote a check for $15 for somebody, and I realized they didn't do what they should have done, and so I want to stop payment on that check. I go to the bank and say, I want to stop payment on that $15 check. The bank says, fine. They stop payment on it, I got a $30 fee. So unless you're really mad at that person, it'd be better just to go ahead and let the check clear. Cashier's checks, traveler's checks, and certified checks. Sometimes we hear about those things, and I want to make sure that we kind of know what those things are. Traveler's checks aren't used much anymore. Traveler's checks are really, you could go to a financial institution and you could buy traveler's checks, special checks. And most people used them for travel. They were a kind of exchange for currency. You go off somewhere and you don't have enough money, or maybe that place, you're in a foreign country or something, they don't want to take a personal check. Well, if you had a cashier's check, a traveler's check, that traveler's check was recognized as good as cash anywhere. Right. But in this day, and I'm not saying people never use never use traveler's checks anymore, but now with debit cards and credit cards and all these sort of things, most people, when I go somewhere, and we've traveled some, overseas and that type of thing, I've never really worried about taking a traveler's check because I've got a MasterCard, my wife has got a Visa. They're going to take those things. But anyway, that's what a traveler's check is primarily just for what it says, for travel. You can buy them in exchange, use them like money. All right, here's two things that people get confused sometimes, but I want you to know the difference. A cashier's check and a certified check. Because you may need one of these sometime. A cashier's check and a certified check. I come by and see you one day and you've got a four-wheeler that I would like to buy. And you're going to sell that four-wheeler for $3,800. And I say, hey, can I give you a check for that? And they say, well, not really. We would prefer cash. Well, I don't particularly want to pay cash for something, so let's see if we can work this out. Well, here's what you can do. If you want to purchase that four-wheeler, purchase that piano, purchase whatever it is, you can get a cashier's check or a certified check. You go to a bank or a financial institution and say, I want a cashier's check made out to John Doe in the amount of $3,800. The financial institution is going to say, okay, give us $3,800 plus the fee for us doing this. Or if this is where you normally do your banking. It hasn't been that long ago I wanted to pay somebody with a certified, with a cashier's check. And so I went and got a cashier's check from the bank for a particular amount of money. And I just had them take it out of my checking account. But it was a check drawn on that particular credit union. It was a credit union. A cashier's check is drawn on the financial institution. It's made out by the financial institution. Now, I've had to either give that financial institution the money, or they've taken it out of my checking or savings account, and they've charged me a fee. Then I go back to John Doe and I say, here's the $3,800 for that four-wheeler. And it's a check made out by the Centrec Federal Credit Union. It's one of their checks. That check is guaranteed good. It is a cashier's check. That check is drawn on that financial institution. They say the funds have already been deposited. This is good to go. So I'm not paying them. The financial institutions pay them. Okay. So it's good. A certified check. I could go to a bank where I have a checking account and say, I need to pay $3,800 to this person, and I'm going to write them a check, but I want you to certify that check. What that means is that the credit union or the bank will certify that check. That check will be certified by the bank or the credit union that those funds are available. And then if it's $3,800, the bank or credit union will hold that $3,800 out of my account until that check clears. So I can give that person a certified check. So I probably went way too deep in that, but here's what I want you to be familiar with. A cashier's check is drawn or is made out by the financial institution itself. It's a check from that financial institution, so it's good. A certified check is a personal check, my personal check, but it's been certified by the financial institution as being good, that the money is available, the money's there, it'll be paid, it'll be honored. So if you want to be sure that you're going to get your money, if you have somebody pay with a cashier's check or a certified check, that assures you that the money is going to be, it is in the bank, is in the credit union, and when that check goes to the bank and clears, they're going to pay you. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. Let's see what else we've got. He talks a little bit at the end of this chapter about a savings program. Just want to make a few comments about it. We'll be through with chapter 4. Now don't quit yet. We're not quite there, but we're almost there. I've told you this before. If you tell me that you are a personal financial planner, but you don't save, I'm going to say, no, you're not. Well, you don't know whether I am or not. Yeah, I do. Because I know what personal financial planning is all about. I do personal financial planning. And personal financial planning is setting financial goals. And the way you get to certain financial goals is through savings. also know that as a personal financial planner, you need to have an emergency fund. And you get an emergency fund by saving. So savings, a true-false question. I don't think I have it on the test. True-false question. To be a true personal financial planner, you must save. True. Savings is a vital part of personal financial planning. True. Personal financial planning, you've got to save. It's a part of it. It's a part of it. Okay. So when he talks about establishing a savings program, that's very, very important. Very important to do that. Now we'll be talking about, and remember this: when you establish that savings program, that money's earning interest, and you may save money in a financial institution, a commercial bank or a credit union, but you may save money by buying a stock, or by buying a bond, or by buying a mutual fund, or a treasury bill, or treasury note, or something like that. We'll talk more about those when we get into investments. But savings is definitely a part of personal financial planning. I think that's pretty much what we wanted to cover in chapter 4. Make sure I haven't missed anything. All right, we are through the first 4 chapters. So what you should have done so far is you should have probably by now turned in mini assignment number 1, because you're about ready to take test number 1. So we must be getting close to the 18th of September. Is that the end of Unit 1? Yeah, September the 18th. So we must be getting pretty close to September 18th right now as you're viewing this video. So you've turned in mini assignment number 1, which is your short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. You've also have your study notes that you printed out. And you had your study notes sitting next to you when you viewed the video. And as I went through the video and said you need to know this and you need to be familiar with this, you highlighted the know with one thing and you highlighted the be familiar with another thing. And now you have taken those and you are studying for test number 1. And then you may say, well, doggone it, that time value of money, I'm not exactly sure whether I understood how to make those calculations or not. Well, that's the video in chapter 2. So you zip back there to video chapter, in the chapter 2, you fast forward and you re-watch that. Make sure you're ready. So you should be in great shape to do test number 1 if you've done those things. Again, I think we are done. Good luck on test number 1, and then before long you'll be viewing me in chapter 5, which is the beginning of our unit number 2. Have a great rest of the day, whatever period of time of day this is. Study hard for test number 1, and I will see you in Unit 2.